There was no way in hell I was not going to go shopping with Donald Trump.
You say that it's a never stop attitude that leads you to say yes to shopping with Donald Trump at
Yeah,
Bergdorf Goodman in
yeah.
1996, despite a number of bad experiences with hideous men throughout your life. Looking back, talk about that. Were you naive, or did you think a calculated risk that went sour? I mean, you've done a lot of crazy things. You took drugs with Hunter S. Thompson, for example, and that to me is like a pretty risky thing to do. But maybe less risky than this. Talk a little bit about that attitude that you had then and maybe even now.
Well, Kara, as you know, the great moment in your life is getting on that airplane, snapping that seatbelt across your lap, flying off to go do a story about somebody you've never met in a place you've never been.
Yep.
That is exciting. You're after the story, after the story. There was no way in hell I was not going to go shopping with Donald Trump. When he said, "Hey, you're that advice lady, come help me buy a gift." I mean, I just thought I died and went to heaven. This is my purpose in life, to help people, to advise them. And Donald Trump at the time was not like the Donald Trump of today. He was, the man about town. Yes, he was a hustler. Yes, but it looked like a lark to me. Also, it reminded me of a sketch I had written on Saturday Night Live. There was no way in hell. And also, I was flirting my brains out with him. Correct. He was being very funny. It was light. It was funny. It was joshing. It was witty. And then it just turned dark. Laura Miller at Slate said, "This is exactly what Donald Trump did to the country. We all laughed at him. We all said he was a clown. We all said he was absolutely an empty suit and laughed our asses off. And then, boom, it turned dark." It's interesting. So I'm not the only one,
No. A lot of I think there's not a woman who hasn't had that experience with a person, right? Everybody has a version of that somewhere, and it's always people don't realize how much of a surprise it is. Actually, even I have been surprised, and you don't see it coming, right? Kind of thing in a lot of ways,
No.
which is
No.
so. Robbie, you came on the show in February 2024, shortly after you won the second defamation trial, and the jury awarded E. Jean $83.3 million in damages. You said that you wanted to let E. Jean be herself, but you had to make sure the jury didn't believe Trump when he said that she was not his type. Talk about how your team prepared E. Jean for the trial, including hair and outfits, because you said you needed to seem fuckable, right? I mean, that's what you yourself said.
Key. Got to be fuckable, or the jury will not believe me, because Robbie ran a mock trial beforehand, and all the jurors agreed that yes, 2 people could be in a Bergdorf dressing room. Yes, 2 people could be in the dressing room, something sexual had happened. And yes, Donald Trump and E. Jean Carroll were the 2 people in the dressing room. But E. Jean Carroll was too much of a desiccated crone to believe anything but that I was begging him for it. So Robbie has a plan.
So I think we did 2 things in prep, one at kind of a surface level and one more serious. At the surface level, you're hearing how E. Jean speaks. She signs a lot of her emails "ravishing regards." It was very important to me. While I didn't want to cage her in any way, I wanted E. Jean to be able to be E. Jean. I didn't want her. I think the rule I said is no words greater than 3 syllables.
Right. Okay.
I was worried that she would speak in a language that some of the jury might understand, but some might not, and that would be off-putting to the jurors. And that just took, frankly, just a lot of prep sessions where we would go through it with her over and over again. And by the end, she was actually phenomenal at it. And I knew in cross she would be great, because when Joe Tecopina or then Alina Habba crossed her, that's when she was really in her element. And it's often easier to answer questions with a hostile questioner than it is to kind of tell your story, especially this kind of story, on direct. The more fundamental issue, which also came out of the mock jury exercises, was that E. Jean, as you can again tell, has a very hard time, understandably so, given her history and her background, of admitting any weakness. And so she had a very hard time even saying how what Donald Trump had done to her had irreparably damaged her life. And just so there's no mystery about that, E. Jean was never able to date again after that happened, and there's psychological reasons that explain that. But she had a very hard time coming to terms with that. And so on that, we did a couple things. One, probably the smartest thing we did, is we hired this phenomenal expert witness psychologist out of California, who was one of the people who developed trauma theory back when they were developing it with Vietnam veterans, and really knows this area really well. And she spent how many hours with Huey?
26 hours locked in a
26
room.
hours.
I'd never been to a therapist. Can you
Wow.
imagine the
I
hideousness?
can't. I've never been to one myself, but go ahead. Yes.
Kara, trust me, don't do it. Really.
Don't worry. Not happening.
You liked it, E.
Well, I learned after the end of 26 hours, my stomach was killing me because
It's
I
true.
learned that I had given up everything erotic and romantic in my life just because of this attack. She put everything together for me, and it made me sick to my stomach. It made me sick.
You did that in order to what?
Because during the jury exercises, particularly the women jurors, really did not like when E. Jean said or suggested in any way that she was not a victim. Not only did they not like it, they hated it. And the reason is because I assume some of them had prior incidents themselves, and certainly all of them knew other women who'd experienced this. So it was very important that E. Jean not only say it, but say it in a way that was believable. And in order to do that, she had to believe it.
Right.
So a lot of shrink time with a phenomenal psychologist, Leslie Leibowitz, got us that. Then, as we were preparing for the second trial, remember the first trial, Donald Trump didn't show up. The second trial, we all believed he would show up. And we knew that it would be the first time that E would see him since 1996, since the spring of 1996 when this happened. And as we were doing, kind of prepping the outline and going through the questioning, it was about 2 days before, it's the weekend, as I recall, E. Jean lost the ability to speak, which again, for E. Jean is quite dramatic because she's phenomenal at speaking. And she literally couldn't answer the question. She had a hard time coming up with words and forming sentences. So I had already suggested that maybe the psychologist should be there for the second trial. E. Jean thoroughly rejected that suggestion on my part. But when we had this session where she was having a really hard time speaking, I said, look, I really think you need to talk to the psychologist again. And she did. And they came up with a strategy for how she would confront Donald Trump when she saw him.
Sure. I mean, the issue of how to be a victim is very hard for women, right? Because there's downsides to both parts. If you're too strong, it's a problem. If you're too weak, it's a problem, correct? Presumably, as a lawyer.
Again, and exactly. And here's this woman who lived her life 25 years submitting stories, goes to live, believe it or not, with Hunter S. Thompson in Aspen for a substantial amount of time. I mean, she was fearless. And so she had a very hard time, I probably would too, of acknowledging the really fundamental damage that this incident had done to her.
Also, I was worried that with the women on the jury, I didn't know what they'd been through. And, just complain that some man jammed his fingers up you and then happened to slip his penis in you may be nothing compared to the trauma they had. So it was, I never want to say I'm feeling bad because I don't want anybody else to feel bad when they hear that I'm feeling bad. It was hard.
It's very Indiana. It's very Midwestern Indiana.
Yeah. So the book is a pastiche of memories, stories from your past, court records, and mixed in are side notes with descriptions and inner monologue. Now, some of them do pack an emotional punch, like in the middle of the transcript of your cross-examination by Trump's attorney, Joe Tacopina, who's grilling you about why you didn't scream during the attack. You write, "It's a surreal feeling being beat up by a man who is asking me to describe being beat up and assaulted by a man he is beating me up to defend." I think it's the fear many abuse survivors have about going to court. Talk about that moment in court.
Well, there's a perfect victim, Kara. Perfect victim. Never is silent. Always screams. Always goes to the police. Always reports to the police. No matter if the guy attacks her after she goes to the police, no matter if he tears apart her reputation, perfect victim always goes to the police. And here's the thing, perfect victim just goes back to her cave and covers herself with a dishcloth. never smiles again, never goes to a party, never laughs, never does anything. But mainly she screams. And Joe Tacopina, straight out of the 16th century, could not believe that I didn't scream. What I had done was I had laughed. And boy, did he make a big deal out of that. Robbie had arguments against it. She laughed. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she laughed. So, of course I laughed because, of course, in an erotic situation, what you do is you laugh at a man to, it sort of calms things down. But being questioned about it, it just pissed me off because he was trying to knock me down. Just trying to knock me down.
Which is his job, to be fair.
Yeah.
This is his job to do so.
No, he's an excellent defense attorney. Let me tell you, Joe Tacopina is one of the best. Mm-hmm. But the thing where I did break down on the stand was our own great attorney, Mark Ferrara, asked me this question. Are you sorry that you've gone to trial, Eugene? And that did it. Hot, blazing tears behind my eyes.
That's when you cried. Yeah.
Because I just hated Donald Trump so much. And they just came gushing down my face.